It was another morning at the ranch when the call came in. HOA Karen had apparently decided that my wife no longer had the right to live on our own property. According to her, some obscure HOA rule allowed her to evict residents at will. The audacity of it was staggering, even by Karen's standards. She called the police, expecting immediate compliance and intimidation. What she didn't know was that my wife was far from ordinary, and that her attempt to assert power would backfire spectacularly. I arrived at the scene just as the officers pulled up. Karen was waving her hands, documents in hand, insisting that eviction was required and that my wife's presence violated HOA rules. The neighbors, who had grown accustomed to Karen's overzealous antics, watched with thinly veiled amusement. But the real twist was yet to come. My wife, calmly standing at the edge of the property, pulled a small device from her pocket and quietly signaled the security team. Moments later, Karen realized that she had underestimated the situation entirely. My wife wasn't just any resident. She commanded authority that extended far beyond local disputes. Her background in federal operations meant that she had the resources, training, and connections to handle this type of harassment decisively. The police, initially confused, quickly confirmed that the eviction claims were baseless and illegal. Karen's words, so forceful just moments ago, faltered under the weight of truth and protocol. As Karen sputtered, attempting to maintain her facade of control, my wife calmly outlined the legal standing of our property, the illegitimacy of the HOA's claims, and the personal consequences of continued harassment. She had prepared every document, every deed, and every precedent to counter Karen's assertions. Her presence was commanding, authoritative, and utterly unassailable. What made the situation even more ironic was Karen's complete ignorance of my wife's professional credentials. She had assumed that threats, intimidation, and bureaucratic posturing would be enough to bend compliance. Instead, she was confronted with a level of authority that dwarfed anything she had ever encountered. By the time the officers departed, Karen was flustered, defeated, and humiliated, realizing that she had not just failed to intimidate. It had exposed her ignorance and lack of preparation. Over the next few days, the ramifications of her failed attempt rippled through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had previously been intimidated by her antics began to speak quietly among themselves, noting that Karen's power had limits, and that attempts to manipulate or bully property owners could be countered with expertise and preparation. The HOA board, already wary of previous disputes, began to distance themselves from Karen's increasingly reckless tactics. The lakefront, pasture, and ranch buildings remained untouched, secure under our authority. Every interaction with Karen became an exercise in restraint, documentation, and strategic planning. Her threats continued via email and social media, but each one was carefully logged and cataloged, forming a record that would further undermine her credibility in any future conflicts. In the end, the attempt to evict my wife reinforced a vital lesson. Overreach meets resistance when faced with knowledge, preparation, and command. Karen's obsession with control was her undoing, and the episode became yet another chapter in a long history of failed attempts to dominate property she had no right to influence. By sunset, the ranch was peaceful again. My wife returned to her daily routines, checking livestock, inspecting fences, and ensuring the property remained in optimal condition. Karen, meanwhile, retreated to her home, frustrated and powerless. Her dreams of authority dashed once more. The message was unmistakable. Attempts to intimidate, manipulate, or usurp rights must be met with preparation, patience, and decisive action. In this ongoing battle, knowledge and strategy always triumph over arrogance and aggression.